In this video, we'll discuss the story that occurred in Toronto, Canada. On Saturday, November 25, 2017, 22-year-old Tess Ritchie did not return home after meeting with a school friend. Her family filed a missing persons report, but it was not the police officers who found the young woman. Tess Ritchie was born on November 30, 1994. The youngest in a family of 5 girls, Ritchie was raised in North Bay before moving to Toronto at 19. One of her sisters, Verena Ritchie, said Tess loved her life, her dogs, and her family. Tess had served tables in the city, but her dream was to land a job as a flight attendant and see the world. She was taking steps to do just that, having completed the flight attendant course at Seneca College in North Toronto. At the same time, she was trying to get a job in one of the major hotels in Toronto. Unfortunately, Tess couldn't find a job to her liking. Her family financially supported her and never refused money when she asked for help. Some Canadian sources also say that when Tess didn't get a job at an airline or a hotel, she started learning Italian and searching for au pair jobs in Italy through the internet. Tess also had her own YouTube channel. The last video she published there was on February 23, 2014, almost 4 years before the events we'll discuss today. Tess talked about her experiences and the difficulties she had to face. Let's listen to some excerpts from this video.
I guess in this video what I'm trying to do is tell my story. Because I know for me, when I was going through this, I was searching everywhere I could, trying to find somewhere where somebody would understand and be able to get what I was going through, and I never found that. My boyfriend decided it was okay to strike me, whether it's just a strike, whether it's a punch, whether it's a hair pull, whatever it is, it's not okay. And like, he told his friends that he just threw a purse at me, and I'm like, even that's embarrassing. If only that's all that happened, but even that's embarrassing that you have to say, oh, all I did was throw a purse at her. No, it's really sad, and it makes me really sad because we were up in his bedroom, and that's when he hit me. I'm trying to justify. I don't even know. It's just, I've never been beat so badly or imagined me being beat so badly. It's so hard every day.
Unfortunately, a few years after recording this video, Tess again faced problems in her personal life. That fall, heartache destroyed her life. On November 23, 2017, Tess went through an emotional breakup with her boyfriend Julian. The next day, she turned to her older sister Rachel, who was 8 years older than her. The two were close. "She was my soulmate," Rachel said. On November 24th, Tess spent most of the day at Rachel's house in Toronto. They talked about the breakup, went shopping, and visited a dog park. That evening, Rachel cooked some food. However, she had to persuade her sister to eat, as she had no appetite due to stress. Despite this, Tess made plans for the night. She decided to meet an old school friend named Riley Simard. Like Ritchie, Simard was from North Bay. She had moved to Toronto in the summer of 2017. The two hadn't seen each other in years, but now that they were both living in the same city, they had started talking again. Simard suggested they go to Crews and Tangos, a well-known drag bar in the Church and Wellesley area. That evening, Rachel's partner ordered Ritchie an Uber so she could meet Simard downtown. Rachel Ritchie recalled seeing her sister running down the front path to the Uber. That fleeting glimpse was the last time she would see her alive. Ritchie arrived at Crews and Tangos around midnight. Simard wasn't there yet. The club was full of people. Tess texted her sister to tell her she reached the place safely. It was commonplace. Ritchie's phone was her second best friend, her sister said. The following morning, Rachel Ritchie sent her younger sister a text message. She didn't expect to hear back immediately, considering Tess had been out the night before. By 6:30 p.m., Rachel still hadn't heard from her. Soon after, she noticed that none of her texts had reached Tess. Rachel tried calling, but all the calls went straight to voicemail. Her mother, Christine Hermiston, also tried to contact Tess, but her phone was off. Christine received a message saying that Tess had ordered an Uber at 4:02 a.m. However, soon after, she canceled it. When registering an Uber account, Tess indicated her mom's credit card. Hence, Christine received a message every time her daughter used a taxi. Tess always kept in touch with her family, so when her phone did not turn on during the day, they began to suspect something could have happened to her. She usually had her phone on her at all times. Rachel asked her partner to check her sister's apartment in Scarborough. At the same time, she started contacting her friends. It was about 9 p.m. on Saturday. Tess was still missing. Her family had a bad feeling about all this. Rachel started calling hospitals and also contacted the police. By the evening of the following day, the police had no news for Tess's family. Several officers tried to find out where Tess Ritchie might be, but no one had seen or heard from her in the last 2 days. On Monday, Tess's mother, Christine, and one of her sisters traveled from North Bay to Toronto to participate in the search. They were putting up and handing out flyers with Tess's picture, hoping someone might have seen her. The family did everything in their power. As for the police, they, unfortunately, did not show their best side when investigating the disappearance of Tess, but we'll talk about this a little later. At the same time, it turned out that Tess's friend, Riley, with whom they visited the bar together, returned home safely after that night. When they asked Riley if she knew where Tess had gone, she said she and Tess had drunk a lot, which resulted in the bar security asking them to leave. They left the bar shortly after 2 in the morning and went to Wellesley Street to eat something. On the way there, they met a guy who eventually went with them. Riley couldn't remember his name. On Wellesley Street, they ordered hot dogs. Tess wanted a vegetarian hot dog, which ended in a conflict with the seller. Tess believed they gave her a hot dog with meat. Riley admitted that her friend took mustard and sprayed the vendor cart with it, after which she, Tess, and the guy with them had to run to Dundonald Street. While there, they saw a woman on the house porch and started talking with her. Her name was Michelle Teep. Their conversation lasted about 20 minutes. Tess told Michelle that she had recently broken up with her boyfriend and shared how hard it was for her. Michelle tried to support Tess. Moreover, they even exchanged phone numbers. Teep said Ritchie seemed like someone trying to have a good time, but when she looked into her eyes, she saw sadness. The breakup with Julian appeared to be weighing her down. "I told her everything does get better and just to hang in there," Teep said. At 4 a.m., Riley received a text from her boyfriend asking her to come home. She said goodbye to Tess and walked towards Yonge Street and then home. Tess was disappointed that Riley had left her. At 4:02 a.m., she ordered an Uber. Thus, one can assume that after her friend left her, Tess decided to go home too. The driver arrived at 4:14 a.m., but Tess wasn't there. On Wednesday, November 29th, just one day before Tess's 23rd birthday, Christine again distributed flyers with her daughter's picture in the area where people last saw her. Knowing that Riley had parted with Tess on Dundonald Street, Christine decided to explore this area. She turned to Anne Brazeau, a nurse who worked at St. Michael's Hospital, as their daughters had been friends since elementary school in North Bay. Together, they set out to find Ritchie amid a growing search effort and social media push to locate her. That's when Brazeau made a haunting discovery. Peering into the bottom of an outdoor stairwell in a construction site at 582 Church Street, Brazeau immediately recognized Ritchie's body lying on the concrete. In 2017, this building was under reconstruction and partially fenced. It looked like this. "I went into complete shock, horror, disbelief. I couldn't process or make sense of what I was seeing," Brazeau said through tears. "I was terrified." Dust from a nearby gravel pile lay like soot on her body. Brazeau let go of the staircase railing and walked backward down the gravel driveway toward Church Street. Hermiston was farther up the sidewalk by that point, unaware that her daughter's body was so close by. Brazeau began to call out to her. "Christine, come back here," she said. "There's a girl in the stairwell. You've got to come back." Hermiston turned, raced down the driveway, and stopped dead at the stairwell. After a few moments, she started screaming and asking God for help. Tess's death became a heartbreaking challenge for her whole family. They found her body just 300 yards from the bar where she spent time before she disappeared and just 20 yards from where her friend Riley last saw her. It raised a lot of questions about the work of the police. After all, her body was a couple of blocks from the bar all this time. However, after Anne and Christine found Tess's body, an anonymous police source provided the press with new information. Allegedly, Tess advertised her intimate services via the internet and worked in a strip club. The grieving mother said Toronto police didn't do enough to search for Richie because they assumed she was an escort. "It was horrifying to read that," Hermiston replied angrily at what police sources told the media after her body's discovery. "She was not making a living in the sex trade industry. It's a blatant lie. They leaked that so it would look like she lived a high-risk life and was in a laneway with somebody, and it wasn't their fault." Although Tess did work as a waitress at a strip club, she quit less than 2 weeks after they hired her. As for intimate services advertisement, it was just an account on a dating site. Even though they had found Richie's body, there was no explanation for what happened to her. Police did not initially suspect foul play, but the homicide unit eventually took over the case after an autopsy revealed she had died of neck compression. Moreover, they found seminal fluid on the girl's clothes and saliva on her bra. After some tests, they found traces of male DNA. Thus, the police finally started searching for a suspect. Considering Riley's testimony, the detectives were trying to figure out the identity of the guy the girls met that night. After all, he was the person Tess stayed with after Riley went home. The police turned to CCTV footage to learn more about that night. This video shows Tess and Riley leaving the bar and going towards the hot dog vendor's cart. There were also CCTV cameras on the building close to where Brazeau found the body. After analyzing the recordings, the police saw Tess and her new acquaintance walking hand in hand up the gravel driveway. According to the information voiced by the police, the camera captured Tess and this unknown man at 4:14 a.m. The following recording, taken 46 minutes later, shows the guy leaving the place alone. Tess never appeared in the footage again. Therefore, the police believe this man was the main suspect in the Tess Richie case. On December 10th, during a press conference, the Toronto police published pictures of this man taken with the help of a video surveillance system. They hoped someone would recognize him. The pictures, taken by an ATM camera, were of poor quality. An ATM was next to the place where Richie bought hot dogs. In the evening of the same day, the police discovered the identity of this man. Oddly enough, after seeing the published images, the man called the police station himself. "I'm the guy in the photo," he said. The person who was with Tess that night was 21-year-old Kaylin Schlatter. In the fall of 2017, Schlatter was 21 and living with his parents and younger brother at their North Toronto home. He had completed a year of postgraduate study as a car mechanic and worked with his dad in construction. Schlatter, his parents, and one of his lawyers went to the police station, where he briefly spoke with detectives but refused to testify. His parents brought some food and a bottle of water for their son. In the end, they provided police with some crucial evidence. While still at the police station, Schlatter threw an empty water bottle into a trash can. The police promptly seized it and sent it for forensic medical examination. It took some time, but eventually, they determined that the DNA sample on the bottle and DNA samples extracted from seminal fluid and saliva found on Tess Richie's body belonged to the same person. Police planned an undercover operation to monitor Schlatter for several weeks, but the DNA results accelerated the process. Schlatter was arrested around 11 p.m. on February 4, 2018, after watching the Super Bowl with his family at the Cineplex Cinemas Queensway in Etobicoke. They took him to 13 Division and placed him in a holding cell at 3:19 a.m. on February 5th. 2 other men were locked in holding cells on either side of him. Schlatter had no idea both were undercover cops and that he was about to give them an abundance of evidence. The 3 men sat in separate, nondescript holding cells with a combination toilet and sink as well as a bed. Schlatter was locked in a cell between the 2 cops, with all 3 men facing the same wall. None of them could see each other, But that didn't stop them from talking for hours. Schlatter told these policemen about his passion for card games and his ability to seduce women. According to him, he has slept with more than 40 women, even though he was only 21 years old. However, he did not mention that he liked both men and women. As it turned out later, Schlatter did not meet Tess and her friend Riley on the street. He was in the same bar as them. That's where he first noticed them. This recording was made shortly before security asked Tess and Riley to leave the bar. Here's Riley, and here's Tess. And this is Schlatter. Schlatter also told undercover officers about Tess. At first, he said that she was alive when he left. Shortly after, Schlatter added that something could have happened because alcohol clouded his mind. He thought he was not capable of it. The police charged Kalen Schlatter with taking the life of Tess Ritchie, but of course, he denied his guilt. In June 2018, two police officers, Alan McCullough and Michael Jones, were charged with 2 counts of misconduct for neglect of duty under Ontario's Police Services Act. According to the notice of hearing, they allegedly failed to thoroughly search the adjoining property or immediate area, interview neighbors, and notify a supervisor. If they had followed protocol, Christine Hermiston stated, they would have found her. She was lying just around the corner. Despite all this, both officers remained working in the police, but received penalties. As for Kalen Schlatter, during the 7-week trial held in 2020, his defense tried to prove his innocence, arguing that someone else could have approached the stairs where Tess was lying by climbing over the fence on the other side of the building and thus remain invisible to the cameras. The lawyers even gave the name of another suspect, but the police thoroughly checked and interrogated this person, finding no evidence linking him to Tess's death. DNA evidence pointed to only one person, Kalen Schlatter. Schlatter was a slight man who appeared soft-spoken in court. He said he has a speech defect that causes him to slur his words and stutter sometimes. Trying to explain the presence of his DNA on Tess's belongings, he said she offered him to hide from prying eyes. At 4:02 a.m., Tess Ritchie ordered an Uber. The driver arrived at the pickup point at 4:14 a.m., but Tess wasn't there. Instead of letting Ritchie meet her Uber driver, Schlatter again approached her. They sat down on a bench at the corner of Church and Dundonald. Tess seemed a bit more upset from the argument, so I walked over to her to check if she was all right, Schlatter said. He said it was Ritchie who asked him to sit and talk. It's impossible to corroborate his account, as there is no sound on any security video from the area. Schlatter testified Ritchie was bummed about her breakup, so he started talking about the dissolution of one of his previous relationships to make her feel better. She listened intently, he said, and even declined a phone call during their conversation. It was a lie. The police examined Tess's mobile phone records and discovered no one had called her during their conversation. Later on, she asked if it's okay if she kisses me, Schlatter said. We stand up and give each other a hug and kiss. These words could not be confirmed either, since there weren't any kisses on the CCTV footage available to the police. According to Schlatter, Ritchie asked him to follow her to the driveway at 582 Church Street and down into the property's outdoor stairwell. The prosecution considered these words a lie because, at that time, the Uber driver was waiting for Tess. They suggested that Schlatter offered to escort Tess to her car, but he was planning something completely different. We will never know what Kalen Schlatter told Tess Ritchie as they walked up Church Street to convince her to walk into the dark at 4 a.m. with a man she just met. Schlatter claimed that he and Tess went down the stairs and started kissing. He wanted more, but Tess said they couldn't go any further. According to Schlatter, they kissed for a long time, which resulted in him ejaculating into his pants. After that, he invited Tess to his house, but she refused and said he could leave, which he did. Schlatter continued insisting Tess was alive when he left. It is important to note that all of the above was Schlatter's story, which the police could not verify. Only 2 people knew the truth about what happened that night. One of them was already dead. The prosecution's witnesses at the trial were Riley, a friend of Tess, and Michelle Teep, a woman with whom they talked that night. They both identified Schlatter. Schlatter not only spilled his guts to 2 undercover cops, he allegedly confided crucial details to a cellmate when they were at a Toronto detention center for roughly 2 months in 2018. The man, who can only be referred to as ES because of a publication ban, has a criminal record spanning decades, including several break-and-enters and a domestic assault. The informant said he initially felt sorry for Schlatter, as he was a young man in jail for the first time. That's why ES invited him to share his cell while the two were in protective custody. But over time, ES soured on his new cellmate. Schlatter would cry himself to sleep at night because he didn't want to do time and because he missed his mommy. And yet he showed no remorse about Richie's death, ES said. He said Schlatter told him about his kiss with Richie and that he lost control when she said she didn't want to go any further. He couldn't stop and strangled Tess with a scarf. In court, Schlatter flatly denied that those conversations took place. His lawyer called ES a manipulative, pathological liar. Putting aside all the testimony and relying only on physical evidence, one can conclude that someone strangled Tess Ritchie and only one person's DNA was on her clothes, Kaylin Schlatter. In her closing address to the jury, defense lawyer Lydia Riva portrayed Schlatter as a harmless kid and an innocent young man. As hard as it might be to accept, and as uncomfortable as it might make us feel, the criminal justice system can get it wrong, Riva said. Mr. Schlatter was an easy target. He is easy to blame. On March 23, 2020, the jury found Schlatter guilty. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment with the right to request parole after 25 years. The trial was heartbreaking for Richie's mother, sisters, and other supporters, who were at times reeling and crying in the courtroom. While they now have some of the answers they craved for so long, their lives are forever changed. Evil not only took Tess that night, it sentenced her surviving family to a cruel and painful future while robbing the world of so much love and potential, said Richie's sister Verena. Tess was the heart of my family, and we will forever be incomplete. In June 2020, Tess Ritchie's family sued Schlatter, the police, and others because of the psychological devastation they experienced after Tess's death. Do I want to just go in the house and hide and let it go? Absolutely. But can I? Absolutely not. I can't, because I can't get it out of my head that they let her lay there for 4 days, said Christine Hermiston. That image is seared in her mind forever, Hermiston said, adding that she should not have needed to travel from her home in North Bay, Ontario to Toronto to do the job of the police. Tess was the glue of the family, and her death has torn everyone apart, her mother said. We have trouble looking at each other. We feel like we all let Tess down. We feel a lot of guilt. And that's why we're continuing to fight on behalf of Tess, because we're not going to let her down again. They are seeking a total of $20 million in damages, including punitive damages.